Hello, Psych 101 students. Welcome to Module 4, Learning Objective 3. You perceive objects by organizing visual information. Okay. What do you see when you look at this figure? Some see the face of a younger woman, so you can see her ear here, and this is her jawline. You can see the eyelash over here. She's looking away from us. This is a black necklace. And or you could also see the face of an older woman. So you've got her eye here. This is her nose, big nose. This is her, open mouth, black open mouth. And you know, you could see either picture, and you can flip back and forth. This is known as a reversible figure. There's only one image to see, but it can be perceived in more than one way. So we're not changing what comes into our eyes. We're only getting one set of visual sensations that come into our eyes, but we can do the work of perception and see it in different ways within our visual cortex. As the psychologist James Enns notes, very little of what we call seeing takes place in the eyes. Christoph Koch, KOCH, has made this point by emphasizing three things. First, we have a blind spot in each eye. More specifically, what initially arrives in the brain is upside down, backward, and has a hole in each eye. So what comes into our eyes is not what we end up perceiving. Okay, second thing, he says the eyes make saccades, but we do not see them. Saccades are a rapid shift or movement of the eyes between fixation points. Like for instance, if you're reading, you're shifting your eyes from one spot to another very rapidly, or just even in normal visual perception of the world, you fixate on one thing, you move your eyes to another thing. There are little shifts, these saccades, and we do about 3 of them per second on average. But you don't notice, kind of a moving, blurred up image as you rapidly shift your eyes from one spot to another. I could be looking at something on to my left and then quickly shift my eyes to the right to look at another object. And what actually happens during these saccades is that you actually kind of go temporarily, just for a moment, blind as your eyes shift. You stop taking in visual information. You'll never notice it because it's so quick, but which is the point he's making. We don't actually see these rapid shifts of our eyes. So, we just move our eyes around and we don't notice anything, moving in our visual field. Um, anyways, the third point he makes is that we can see with our eyes closed while dreaming. I mean, you get images in your brain while you're dreaming, but your eyes are closed. So showing that, you can see things in your brain without using your eyes. Uh, so it is within our visual cortex that we organize visual information in order to perceive objects. Uh, as it says on the screen here, the founders of Gestalt psychology postulated a series of laws or rules, basically to explain how our brains group the perceived features of a visual scene into organized wholes. These laws are known as the Gestalt principles of perception. One of the visual perception system's most basic principles is organizing visual features into an object. In terms of Gestalt principles, an object is a figure that is distinct from the background. The background is referred to as the ground. So whatever stimulus we put our attention on becomes the figure, and everything else becomes ground or background. It's like that reversible figure on this slide here. I mean, if you concentrate on looking at the young woman's face, features of the old woman's face kind of become part of the background. And if you concentrate on the old woman, then features of the young woman's face just become part of the background. And you can't actually see both at once. I mean, in a sense, you can look at this picture like I am right now and say, yeah, I can see both at once, but you actually rapidly shift back and forth in order to have the experience of like seeing both at once. Really, you're only actually perceiving one face or the other at any moment. And this is the idea of figure and ground. You constantly shift your eyes around. Things become figures. Whatever you focus your attention on at any moment is a figure, and everything else in your visual field just becomes background. So let's look at a cool silhouette of or silhouette picture of a saxophone player. Here he is. Look at this saxophone player. Cool picture. Okay, that's all. We'll come back to this later. Okay. The visual systems organization of features and regions to create the perception of a whole unified object is known as grouping. And this comes from the Gestalt psychologist as well. Let's take a look at the Gestalt principles of grouping. And here we see a number of them listed here. Gestalt psychology describes several principles of grouping that explain how we perceive features of the visual field as a unified whole object. We constantly are seeing things in our visual field that, one object is blocked by another, but we still know what that object is, even though we don't see the whole thing. I mean, if my mother's face is in a crowd and I only see half the face, I still recognize it has my mother without seeing like the whole face. Like we often are dealing with partial information, and so we use these principles of grouping in order to kind of make sense of the things that we're seeing. So let's take a look at these. I'm going to zoom in. So we'll start with these two: proximity, and these will all seem really obvious, but they're because it's what your brain automatically does. Okay, proximity: close figures are grouped as an object. So when you look at the set of dots, we see these 16 dots as 3 groups of objects because of proximity. It's kind of like, if these were people, we'd say there's 3 groups of people. Similarity: similar figures are grouped in an object. So we see this rectangle is having 2 locked pieces. It kind of looks like 2 puzzle pieces fit together to make the rectangle, because there's similarity on the left side, there's a different similarity on the right side, and so they seem like distinct objects that have been fit together rather than as a whole object. And we even we have words for when we see certain humans or animals grouped together, and these words reply to the fact that there's similarity and there's proximity. So like if I talk about a crowd of people, it's because there's a group of people, they're all similar because they're people, and so you get the similarity and you've got the proximity, they're all standing together. I wouldn't say that call a group of people that are spread out over a long, I don't know, over, let's say, a big field or something and spaced apart. But when they're close together and when they're similar, we call it a crowd of people. And and also I wouldn't call it a crowd if there was one person and one cow and one street sign and I don't know, one dog. I mean, you need the similarity in order to see it as a group, as one unified whole. Right? Like, I don't say, oh, there's 10 people standing on the corner looking at something. I say there's a crowd of people because they have similarity and they have proximity. And likewise for animals, we talk about a herd of deer, for instance, or a flock of birds, because the group shares similarity and proximity. So we use these constantly in our language. We use it in our perception. Continuity, intersecting lines are interpreted, as continuous. So we see the green bar as one piece that continues behind the purple cylinder. It's because the lines line up. So, you imagine that there's this green bar that continues behind the cylinder. You can't see it because part of it's blocked, but that is your assumption, that it's a full green bar, because it likely is. Uh, Closure, figures with gaps are interpreted as complete. So we see this figure as one whole triangle, even though there are gaps. It's the easiest explanation. If I ask you what this is, you say it's a triangle. You might mention that there's gaps, but it is seen as a triangle, even though it's not technically a triangle. Illusory contours are perceived even when they do not exist. So we see the contours of a square here. So there's no actual square. There's no line, along these side edges. There's no lines, but you see them. You draw them in. You can see a complete yellow square here, even though it doesn't really exist. And also, the concept of figure ground comes into play here, because if you concentrate on the yellow square, and it becomes the figure, and the rest of the picture becomes background, and so you get the perception that the yellow square is a different shade of yellow, or it's a brighter yellow than the yellow in the background. I mean, just look at here where my mouse is. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I don't have a pointer. Okay, anyways, here, if you see, like, this yellow here looks brighter than this yellow over here. And this is part of what happens when you make something a figure. It stands out, and so it can actually change your perception of the shade of color. And I can assure you, the yellow is consistent. There is no change in color, but I can't help but see the square as being, kind of a brighter yellow than the background. Anyways, these are straightforward kinds of principles of grouping that we automatically do in order to perceive the world. I'm going to show you some examples. Let me get rid of my pointer here. Where is it? Well, laser pointer. Here's an example of continuity. Wow, that guy's got a long arm. Look at him reaching behind these other players. So this is an example of continuity. That's like the green bar in the last picture, because it's parallel, creates this humorous kind of image that his arm is extending back behind this other player, and because they line up, and so this example of continuity. It's like your first assumption is that he's got a really long arm, and we know it's not right, but it's easy to see it that way. Here's an example of continuity and closure. And continuity exists because, you see this space here is continuing between these two circles, and yet it's just empty space. It certainly doesn't continue in this gap in between the circles. It's like, but you see this as continuing. This continuity, because the lines match up. It seems as one white straight line that continues. Really, it's just empty space, and there is no actual long white bar here. It's just we also have closure going on because we would identify these as circles, even though they're missing parts. But if asked to describe this picture, you'd say there's a big circle, a medium circle, a small circle. But there are, we know these aren't circles, but we'd call them that. We just kind of, even though there's a part missing, we'd close it in and describe it that way. I like this one here, illusory contours. I mean, you can't help but look at this and see it as a soccer ball, and you kind of just fill in where the edges would be. You can kind of see the outline of the soccer ball, even though there's just white space all around it. It's really just a bunch of black, you know, um, um, shapes on the screen, but you see the ball. And so we fill in information that's missing in order to make sense of the world. To describe this as, oh, there's like six black shapes on the screen. I mean, it's much easier to fill in what's missing and see it as a ball, and it makes more sense to us then. This one is nice. I'm it's I've seen it so many times that it seems so obvious to me now, but I know a lot of people still miss it when they see it. There's an image in this figure. I'm not going to tell you what it is or give you any hints. We'll come back to it later, but if you don't see it right away, maybe pause the screen and take a few minutes and see if you can see what the image is within this picture here. There's a very noticeable thing that's in this picture. Once you see it's extremely noticeable. But I remember it was very hard the first time I ever did this. But once again, we'll come back to this and we'll see the answer later if you don't see it now. Okay. Um, Bottom up versus top down processing. This is also part of the Gestalt psychologist's contribution. Bottom up processing is I'll just read what's here for now. The perception of objects is due to analysis of environmental stimulus input by sensory receptors. So, stuff coming from the environment, from the outside world, so for instance, light rays coming into your eyes or sound waves coming into your ears. And you're analyzing it initially with with your sensory receptors. You're gathering the raw data of what the light is telling you or what the sound is telling you. Okay, this analysis and influences the more complex conceptual processing of that information in the brain. And so what bottom up processing is analysis of the raw data produced by sensation in order to figure out what you're seeing. It's not relying on previous knowledge or expectations or context. It's just taking your best guess at what the raw data is telling you you're looking at. Top-down processing is the perception of objects is due to the complex analysis of prior experiences and expectations within the brain. This analysis influences how our sensory receptors process stimulus input from the environment. With top-down processing, you're not just looking at the raw data, you're manipulating it. You're doing things like kind of completing the circle to see this as a soccer ball. This involves top-down processing. You would never see this as a ball if let's say you had no prior knowledge of what a soccer ball looks like. Then you probably wouldn't draw the lines in and see it as a circle. You need that prior knowledge that of what a soccer ball looks like, and then you just kind of see it right away. So the top-down processing changes your basic analysis. If you didn't know what a soccer ball you describe this as six black figures, different geometric figures on a black figures on a white screen. Like, you wouldn't see it as a ball. Top-down processing is what allows you to see that as a ball because you're using your prior knowledge, your entire experience, in order to make sense of what you're seeing. So you use prior experiences and knowledge, you use expectations like you're more likely to see something if you expect to see it. You also use context clues in order to determine what you're perceiving. So that's why it's called top down. You're relying on stuff that's already in your brain in order to make sense of something. Let's look at an example, and this is going to be an auditory example. I will go to this website here, and we're gonna listen to a little bit of Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven."
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alone there. It's just a sprinkling for the May Queen. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on.
Okay, so that's a little snippet of Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven." Let's listen to that same snippet in reverse, and you're going to do some bottom-up processing here. Like, I'm not telling you anything about what it should sound like or what you might or might not recognize in it, but just see if it makes any sense to you. Okay, if this is working properly, like I hear a whole bunch of stuff going on because I've done this a lot, but hopefully it sounded like a bunch of gibberish to you and you didn't really make out any words or very little. Because bottom-up processing is just going to lead you to a set of confusing sounds. But let's switch it and do a little top-down processing. So I'm going to provide you with an expectation of what you what you could be hearing. And let me show you these reverse lyrics. So, oh, here's my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He'll give those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan. Let's listen to it now and read these lyrics as you listen to it, and you should be able to pick them out. The old sad Satan. Okay, I'm going to see if I can do this properly. Let me switch back to our PowerPoint. Oops, missed it. Okay, here we go. And so what happened there was that we introduced a little extra knowledge for you to use when you listen to the backward lyrics, and with the expectation and that a little extra knowledge, you could all of a sudden make sense of words that you could actually hear words within that where it was once just gibberish. And this is the way that the top-down processing works. It gives us kind of a context. It gives us an expectation of what we might be seeing or hearing in the world, and then we can kind of manipulate or at least it influences how we sense something. So those lyrics influenced how we heard those backward lyrics. Okay, let's go on here. Let's look a little bit more at bottom-up processing here. If you printed out or downloaded the PowerPoints, you may not have this particular slide. I just added it. So I'm going to start with this diagram. Bottom-up processing is real-time data-driven sensory analysis. So this woman's looking at the screen and a letter appears. So sensory data is brought to the retina. Light rays come from the screen into her eyes. The data is transmitted to her visual cortex. Well, we know that the visual cortex is not properly represented here. We know it's at the back of the brain in the occipital lobe, but they just made it this. They just kind of drew the whole brain here, I think. Anyways, and so the data is processed to form a visual experience, and this bottom-up processing arrives at the answer that she's looking at, a B, the letter B. And this is kind of how bottom-up processing works. She didn't know what was going to appear on the screen. It could have been a letter, a number, it could have been anything. And so she gets the information through her sensory receptors. She matches it, as best she can to figure out what it is that she's seeing. She based on the curves in the line in the B, like it makes her believe that she's seeing a B. Now I'm going to add something here and just to show you, switch to a little top-down processing. Just give me 1 second. Okay, let's say I do this, and I'll try to do this neatly, but I'm going to add this here. Just going to add a few different characters here. Okay. So now, if you look at this, what used to be a B, I mean, you may not be as sure that it's a B anymore, right? Because, given the sequence of numbers, 11, 12, you could see that B easily as being a 13, where it's just kind of, the numbers were written too close together, so they're touching. But it would make more sense, given the sequence of numbers, 11, 12, and then 14, 15, that this would be a 13. It doesn't make as much sense to be a B. And so, in this case, this would, you would be using context, and you would be using your knowledge of the sequence of numbers, from 11 to 15, and in order to possibly see this as a 13. And so top-down processing can change how we see something, how we sense it, or at least how we perceive something that we're looking at. It's like extra information that helps you make sense of what you're looking at. Okay, going back over to the words over here. So another example, bottom-up processing, real simple example. You're walking around your house and you stub your toe. You get sensory receptors in your toe that react to the stubbing of the toe, and you get these signals sent up to your brain telling you that your toe really hurts, that you're in pain. And this pain signal is bottom-up processing. You don't have to know anything about stub toes. You don't have to have experienced it before. It doesn't require any previous knowledge to feel the pain of a stub toe. That's basic data-driven bottom-up processing. The pain is there, whether you're expecting it or no matter what your history is. So bottom-up processing is really it's kind of like the basic raw data that's coming in through your senses and how you experience it and what you make of it without relying on other information. Here's another example. So I ask you, what is this? I give you this shape here. Is it the letter A? Well, maybe it's missing a part, but is it part of a ladder? What could be? Is it the letter H? Kind of looks like an H slanted away. Could be train tracks. Sometimes bottom-up processing isn't going to give us an answer alone. A lot of times we see things that are ambiguous, that just by themselves could be more than one thing. You can't determine what this figure is just on its own. And so bottom up processing will sometimes give you, possibilities without giving you a final answer. You'll often make your best guess. Oh, if you had to answer, you might guess that it's an A or an H or whatever. Um, let's go to top down processing. And excuse just give me one second. Okay, with top down processing, we have what's called perceptual sets, which are tendencies to perceive stimuli in specific ways that make sense given prior experiences and expectations. So you have perceptual sets that they're like preconceived notions of what you expect to see or what you expect a stimulus to be. And we constantly have those. If I look inside one of my, inside a cupboard within my kitchen that where like, we keep dishes and stuff, like I'm expecting to see bowls and plates and glasses and cups and if there's something that's maybe it's really an ashtray or something, I might mistake it for a bowl because it's in with uh, all the what do we call that, the dishware or whatever. And because I would have a perceptual set, as soon as I look in the cupboard, I'm expecting to see certain things, and so I might mistake an ashtray for a small bowl, for instance. I don't know why I would have an ashtray in there, but it's just the example that came to my mind right now. Let's look at a few examples here. So going to this, the cat, I'm sure everyone reads that as the cat. We see our shape that I presented on the last slide. And now if I ask you, you'd pretty clearly say that this shape here in the first word is an H, making the word the, and the same shape in the second word is actually an A. So it's exactly the same stimulus. So you get the same um, set of um, set of neural impulses when you look at this at the H and the as when you look at that A and cat because they're exactly the same shape. So you sense them same, but you perceive them differently. This is due to a perceptual set. You're they make sense. Like you see that they're surrounded by letters, so they make sense that they're also letters. And so you see the first one as an H because that makes the most sense to form a word, and the second one as an A. And this is how top-down processing works. We rely on other information, background knowledge, experiences, context to make sense of things. Um, another example from your book that includes these pictures here is about the pilots on New England, no, not New England, New Zealand flight 901. They were going to the Antarctica, and they expected to see, what's shown in picture A here, the flat terrain on the Ross Ice Shelf in Antarctica, because that's where they were heading. They were heading to the ice shelves with over 200 people on board to give them a look at them, and and that was their expectation. That was their perceptual set. They're expecting that they're going to be flying over this flat ice shelf um, that has, no hills or mountains or anything like that. But they were somewhat off course, and it led to tragic consequences when the pilots failed to see Mount Erebus. It's a 12,000-foot high volcano shown in the second picture, and it was directly in their flight path, and they crashed right into it. And I mean, there was obviously some whiteout conditions and things like that, but they weren't looking for it. They weren't expecting it to be there. They thought they were on course over the ice shelf, which is very flat. And so they actually had lowered their altitude. And even though, at some point that mountain must have been visual to them, they didn't really notice it until it was too late and they could not avoid crashing into it, killing everyone on board. Um, Once again, that's an example of a perceptual set. They had an expectation of what they expected to see. And so when something doesn't fit your expectations, you can actually like almost be blind to it. Um, I've heard a story about how the early North American natives could not see the ships that approached um, when the Europeans came and to to the to the continent here, um, because like they had no knowledge of big ships on the water. So like it was like apparently they were like blind to them because they had no expectation that there was such a thing as big ships that traveled on the ocean. I mean, they had canoes and things like that, but because so when you come across some perceptual experience that doesn't fit any of your knowledge or experiences or expectations, you can completely miss it. And that's what happened with these pilots crashing into the mountain. They did not expect it to be there. And the final example here is at the bottom. You can read this pretty well, and once again, you have to use top-down processing in order to do that. Bottom-up processing gives you a different answer. You would, you would see, oh, this is Y0U C4N R3AD. Like, with no top-down processing, that's what bottom-up processing would provide. You would not see these as words because each one has numbers in it, and it'd be like a young child just learning to read would probably read it like that. They wouldn't see them as words because they wouldn't have enough experience built up. They would go through and say like C4N and R3AD, but you have a whole history of reading and you have experience with all these words if you're a native English speaker, and so you fill in gaps and you make sense of things even when they're not fully formed or correctly formed, and you can use the context and your prior knowledge to see these as complete words or a complete sentence. Okay, let's look at a cool picture of a woman's face now. And here we see a woman's face. Um, and hopefully you all see the woman's face, and this is not a tricky reversible figure. So um, introducing this now as a woman's face creates a perceptual set or an expectation. And people see the woman's face more quickly than if this picture is introduced as a trombone player, as I did earlier. I said, look at the trombone player, and you would have been immediately saw the trombone player. You may have seen the woman's face back then too. It's not that hard, but the idea is that you'll be quicker. If I say it's a trombone player, then you look at this picture, you see the trombone player very quickly. If I say it's a woman's face, you'll be quicker than other people, that heard trombone player to see the woman's face. Because this is what a perceptual set is. It's like an expectation of what you're expecting to see or what you're expecting to hear. So you're more likely to perceive something that you expect to perceive. Make sure you check out the Green Needle brainstorm video in the video list for an example of this. It's an interesting video. It's only like 10 seconds or something, but you could try it a few times. And it's sometimes tricky to get it to work right, but it's kind of cool when you get to work. Anyways, you'll see. It presents a auditory stimulus where you can hear two different words. You can hear green needle, or you can hear brainstorm, which depending on whichever word you look at, that's the one that you hear. Anyways, make sure you check out that video. So a little learning tip here: when you see bottom-up processing, think of processing based on information about the basic stimulus properties, and the processing of information that is based on the properties of the stimulus in the world. It's, you're figuring out what something is based on the set of features that come in through your senses, and not using other knowledge. Top-down processing is processing based on information in your brain that's already in your brain, stored in your brain at the top of your body. The processing of information that is based on your knowledge, personal experiences, and expectations. Let's return to this picture. For anyone that didn't see it before, I've included a title now in order to create a perceptual set. I'm telling you that you're looking for a Dalmatian. It makes it a little bit easier to find it. Still not really easy from my experience in the past with, once again, for me, it just seems so obvious, but I know it may still be tricky, so don't feel bad if you don't see it right away. If you haven't found it yet, you can pause the video if you want to take a few minutes and continue looking, because I'm about to show you where it is now. But once again, if you want to look on your own, now's the time to just pause it, look for a few minutes, see if you can find it. But I will show you, for anyone that still can't see it, I'll show you where the Dalmatian is. Let me get my highlighter here, and I'll try to kind of outline it here. This is the Dalmatian's head. You see a floppy ear there. Here we go along the Dalmatian's back. Basically, kind of goes back here like this. It's hard to make out exactly where the tail is. But you can see there's a back leg here. Kind of comes down here. I'm not doing a very good job. There's a leg here. This one's really kind of missing, but you can see where it would be. And then you can continue along the body here. This front leg is pretty clear. And there's a second front leg you can see, and that's completely black down here. Anyways, hopefully you can see there is a Dalmatian here. And now let me get my highlighting is pretty horrible, but so let me erase my highlighting, and you should be able to see it, still. The front of the Dalmatian is much clearer, the head and the front legs and the shoulder, and the back's a little harder to see, but okay. So, but once you see it, you basically always see it. Every time you look at this picture now, you'll quickly see this Dalmatian. So his head's pointing down, sniffing at the ground. This looks like a tree in the background or something. I don't know what's over here, but you can clearly see that this is the Dalmatian here, even though it's not all drawn in. So you're using a lot of Gestalt principles in order to see this Dalmatian. You're mentally drawing in lines that aren't there, and you're kind of making the best sense of what is really just a bunch of black splotches on a white background. And that will conclude learning objective 3.